What up, Wizards? It's Dev from The Place, and if you don't mind, I'd like another half hour to soapbox about my new favorite Magic the Gathering format, because I cannot stop being an excited little girl about Pauper EDH. I ain't been this happy since they came out with Stuffed Crust, and if you want a real good indicator of how stoked on this format I am, as I record this, they're about to start the top 8 of World Championships 2025. And I'm talking about Pauper Commander. That's because I cannot stop loving it so much. And something I didn't talk about the last time I did a Pauper EDH video, and I was really afraid nobody was going to watch it. And then all you guys watched it. So thanks for that. You going to watch this one? Guess we'll wait and see, right? But either way, something I didn't bring up too much, at least, is that obviously one format is less expensive than the other. Look, I'm trying to build Firelord Zuko right now in Big Boy Commander. Big Girl Commander? Doesn't matter. I don't discriminate. And that's going to cost me like $60 out of pocket by the time I'm done with that budget deck. Whereas with Pauper EDH, this is really important, you can just kind of build a deck with whatever you got laying around the house, which kind of closely matches my original Magic the Gathering experience, you know? You couldn't order cards from a website when I was a kid. I guess you could try Troll and Toad. See about that. But you could just go down to the card shop and buy the cards, right? No, they don't have all the cards you want under the glass, and they're really expensive. Can you trade for them? Sure. Everyone's really stingy, though, so sometimes you're just kind of stuck with what you got, and that's how you brew decks. And that's kind of what I've been liking about Pauper EDH. You don't have to go out of your way and order a bunch of cards, and even if you do, like 10 cents cards, so who cares? This time around, Avatar dropped, and I decided to take a look through all of the Pauper EDH commanders in that set and figure out which one I wanted to play the most. Originally, it was Daily Agents. That card looked really good, and then I play tested it a bit, and I realized that I'm only doing like 4 damage per attack step. It's not really that good. I guess I'm gaining some life. Who cares, though? You know, it just wasn't the card I wanted it to be, but I did land on a Pauper EDH commander that seemed really powerful and turned out to be really powerful, to the point I think you might actually make a case for this card in Big Lady Commander. And that is Zhao over here. Zhao the Ruthless Admiral is 4 mana, 2 and a couple of Rakdos hybrids for a 3/4. It's got firebending too, but the cool part of this is that whenever you sacrifice any other permanent, it doesn't even have to be a creature, any permanent, all your dudes get +1/+0 until end of turn, which is a strong line of text. And I think you'd go in the 99 of a bunch of different Rakdos, like Aristocrats list, like Judith and Jury and all that. But I also think there's a possibility this could helm a commander deck and do pretty well with all the stuff it could have at its disposal. If you can play Mayhem Devil in this card, you're probably feeling pretty good. But even in Pauper EDH, with lots of cards you've never heard of in your life, there's plenty of ways to support this dude just with the stuff you got laying around in a box somewhere. So let's take a look. How did I build Zhao Ruthless Admiral without ordering a single Magic card to my house to be delivered? We'll find out right after the break. Let's go. And I'm your favorite Magic channel's favorite Magic channel. Best believe that the professor go bananas for my deck tech. All right, it all starts with a copy of the man himself, Zhao Ruthless Admiral. I've already told you what this does, so you know. So really the question is, how are we sacrificing stuff in this deck? Well, that becomes pretty evident very quickly with Carry and Feeder here. We're going to start with all the creatures and whatnot that'll let us sacrifice things. And there are quite a few at the common level, even really powerful ones, like Carry here. But let's not forget about Viscera Seer as well, who we used to call Gangrel because he looks just like the WWE star Gangrel. But this is something that we see a lot of in Commander Aristocrats decks, and it's common, so it's not going to change here. This is one of our better sack outlets for sure. But there's also Lampad of Death's Vigil. This does cost mana to sacrifice stuff, but still gives us some drains, helps keep our life total up, and gives us a great sack outlet. Again, even though there's mana involved here. There's Vampire Aristocrat. This is just basically a Phyrexian Ghoul or a Nantuko Husk kind of effect, and it literally is that, except it's got the vampire creature type. The card just sacks a creature +2/+2 till end of turn, and that'll come in handy an awful lot of the time. Sepulchre Ghoul, it's always been hard for me to say it, is a 2-mana version of the effect I've just shown you, but you can only do it once per turn. But that is still enough to play a card like this in your deck for sure. Thermopod is in here. Haven't seen this in a while. 5 mana for a 4/3 from Cold Snap, but we can sack a creature and add red to our mana pool, which can be really, really good once it's actually on the table. We've also got Atog in here, banned in Pauper, but not banned in Pauper Commander, believe it or not. There's only a couple of cards banned in Pauper Commander. Atog is not one of them, and there's something like 17 artifacts in the deck, and another 15 or so cards that create artifacts in some way or another. So pretty important job for Atog to be here. Sack artifacts, make him larger, but make the whole team larger if we've got Zhao out. We've got Destructive Digger in here. 3 mana for a 3/2 goblin. Pay 3, tap it, sack an artifact or land to draw a card. Pretty expensive ability, but it is a card draw engine in the deck that also boosts all of our creatures when we sacrifice one of these things. We've also got Emerald Gear Smasher in here. So 3 mana for a 2/3, tap, sack an artifact to deal 2 damage to each opponent. So each opponent is pretty good in a game of Commander for the most part. This doesn't do too much damage, but again, we've got plenty of artifacts in here. When we sack the artifact and hit somebody for 2, then all of our team gets boosted. So I think it's barely worth playing a card like this with so many artifacts in the deck. There's also Torch the Tower, which is a common. Kind of an expensive common, but it's common nonetheless. So we can sacrifice stuff to this. That'll boost our team, and we can blow up creatures. We've got a lot of stuff in the deck that effectively does that, right? Removal that we can sack stuff to, like Voltage Surge, which we can sacrifice artifacts to make it larger and take out bigger stuff. Makeshift Munitions is in this deck. Pretty cool tool to have access to. I've always really liked this card in a deck with so many artifacts and, you know, so much benefit for sacking stuff. Absolutely play this. It hits any target. That's amazing. Take out small creatures. Village Rites is in here as a pretty obvious piece. We want to draw cards. We want to sacrifice stuff. This only costs 1 mana. Let's go. Nasty End is in here. We can sack our commander to this and draw 3, but if we sack anything to it, we'll be drawing 2 and boosting the team. There's also Rowan's Grim Search. We can sacrifice artifacts and tokens and whatnot too, and get a couple of the best cards from the top 4. Bone Splinters, back onto the removal that lets us sacrifice things. This is one of those, as well as Eaten Alive, a very similar but mostly better card than Bone Splinters. And then Spark Harvest. We're not going to be hitting too many Planeswalkers in this format, but I still want a few different copies of this kind of card. Candy Grapple is an interesting version of this effect. We can bargain away a token or an artifact or something and have a creature get -5/-5 until end of turn. All of this removal that lets us sack stuff is fantastic in this deck, because if we're going to move into combat, we can take out one of our opponent's blockers with the removal spell, sack one of our dudes, and boost the whole team by 1,000,000. So feels pretty good. Executioner's Capsule lets us sacrifice it to blow up a creature. Do you see what I'm doing? It's also an artifact, which benefits the deck in a number of ways. Accursed Marauder is one of the first couple of cards that just sacks itself. You know, you got to have some stuff like that in this deck, but this sacks itself to be a removal spell, as does Fleshbag Marauder, which is a common as well. This is basically very similar to Accursed Marauder, but will also take creatures off the table when it hits the play. Reckless Barbarians in the deck. This can just sack itself for a couple of red mana, which is fan-freaking-tastic. I'll take that every day of the week. We've got Blood Pet in here, which can sack itself for a single black mana. So very similar in some ways to Reckless Barbarian, but again, we'll take these sack themselves effects. Got a couple of spicy cards coming up, Fire Whip being one of them. I had to check, make sure this was common. It is. 2 mana for an aura that enchants a creature. Play it on a creature you control. Tap enchanted creature. Enchanted creature deals 1 damage to target creature or player. Sacrifice Fire Whip. Fire Whip deals 1 damage to target creature or player. So we can play this on one of our dudes and then take out like small guys, or we can start dealing damage to our opponent's face like every turn, and that's kind of cute. But when we're ready, we can just sack the Fire Whip, take a small creature out, and give the whole team the +1/+0 boost. Same thing goes with Inferno Fist. This is yet another aura that enchants to a creature we control. An enchanted creature gets +2/+0. And if we play red and sacrifice the Fist, Inferno Fist deals 2 damage to a creature or a player. So we can target head with this, which I like, but mostly we're going to be taking out small to middling creatures and hitting the team with a big buff. And I like that about cards like this for sure. Now we get into the stuff that creates treasure tokens in the creature base. We've got Namazu Trader, which is my favorite of these, because not only will it create a treasure token, but it's also a sack outlet, because when it attacks, we can sacrifice an artifact or a creature and surveil too. So that'll be good for the team. We've got Exhibition Magician, one of my favorite names for a card in a while here from New Capenna. This can make a 1/1 token, or it can make a treasure token. When it comes into play, most of the time you're choosing the treasure token. Red Cap Thief is basically like Exhibition Magician without the 1/1 token mode on it, so you just take the treasure when it comes into play. Brazen Freebooter is a hill giant that gives you a treasure token when it comes into play. And then Grabby Giant will give us a treasure token on the adventure mode, but once it's in play, it's a reasonably sized creature that will also allow us to sack stuff to it, and it doesn't even tap. You know, if we have extra mana, we can sack 2 things and draw 2 cards and buff the team by 1,000,000. He doesn't tap, so he can still attack the turn that you do the ability. Altogether, really good card for the deck. Goldhound is in here, another kind of treasure token, but something else that can sacrifice sacrifice itself, which we want in the deck. We've got Voldaren Epicure, which will make a blood token when it comes into play, and also just be a creature to receive buffs and to, like, bone splinters off of and stuff. You need that. Big scores in here, again, to make treasure tokens, but again, more card draw too, and that's really important. We've got Giskian Infiltrator. The next couple of cards I couldn't really categorize necessarily. Infiltrator is the only card in the deck that gets larger when you sack stuff, but there are a few notable things you could play other than this. I'll get to those in just a moment. Now, as far as the next card, Nested Shambler, again, I couldn't really categorize this card. It's one of the only cards in the deck like it. I'm not playing a bunch of Infestation Sage effects or anything, but Nested Shambler is in some ways the ultimate Infestation Sage. When it dies, you get X tapped 1/1 green squirrel tokens, X being Shambler's power. So if you sacrifice a couple of things and then sacrifice Shambler, you'll get like 3 or more squirrel tokens at that point. And then you can sacrifice the squirrel tokens and buff the rest of the team, right? So you can get really big buffs off of Shambler if you get its power big enough and then sacrifice it. Now, we've got a few cards in the deck that allow us to steal our opponent's creatures and then sacrifice them to our bone splinters and stuff like that. As you might expect in red-black sacrifice, there's a Hijack, which allows us to not only threaten creatures, but also artifacts and give them haste till end of turn. Bloody Betrayal is in here. This is just a threaten effect for 3 mana that also gives us a blood token, which is really good in this deck. It's a thing we can sacrifice for just 1 mana. Pax Betrayal is in here. We do not have any wolves or werewolves, so we really shouldn't be scrying too very often, but it is just gain control of a creature at the common rarity for 3 mana. I'll take it. Now, finally, there's Traitorous Instinct. This does cost 4 mana, but it also gives the creature +2/+0. I think it's worth it a lot of the time. There's Monstrosity as we start our sort of food package in the deck. There's a 7 or 8 card, like ancillary food theme in the deck that we're not leaning on too heavily, but when you do get some of these cards, you'll be happy. Monstrosity makes a food token when it dies and shouldn't be too hard to make it die. Sweet Tooth Witch is where things start getting sweet, though. When it enters the battlefield, we get a food token. We can pay 2, sack a food to have a player lose 2 life. There's also getting into the artifacts, which is most of the rest of the deck at this point. There's Wayfarer's Bauble, as you might expect. We're going to play that card every time we can. But there's also Wanderer's Twig, which does an impression of Bauble, just nowhere near as good. The difference is that it only costs 1 to activate, but we're putting the land into our hand. We just want an egg. We just want an artifact we can crack. Finally, there's Expedition Map in this little suite of artifacts here. This pays 2 mana to put the card into your hand rather than put it into play, but still, you'll take a little egg you can crack. Necrogen Spellbomb will make people discard cards, or we can draw cards. Nile Spellbomb will mess around in graveyards and also draws cards. That feels pretty good. We've got Metal Spinner's Puzzle Knot, which we can sacrifice and draw cards a couple of different ways off of, both going and coming. And then here comes the rest of our little food package. We've got Instant Ramen in here. You know what that does. Draw a card, sack it for 3 life. Limbus, draw a card, sack it for 3 life, and of course it can come back. We've got Candy Trail in here, pretty cheap to get into play in the first place, fixes our draws. Nim Replicas in here, a 3 mana 3/1 artifact zombie that we can pay 3 mana and sacrifice to have a creature get -1/-1 till end of turn. This can be really good once blocks are chosen, so keep that in mind. There's Ashnod's Altars. Looks weird, right? This was printed at Common in Chronicles. You can play this card in Pauper EDH. Weirdly enough, but you can, so that makes it the best card in their deck. Let's play this card. Absolutely. Commander Sphere is in here too. Normally I wouldn't resort to Commander Sphere, but this is Pauper EDH, and we can sacrifice it to draw a card and give the team a nice little raise. So I'll take it. We got Rakdos Signet in here, as again you might expect to see Rakdos Signet in a Rakdos deck. We've got Leaden Mirror in here because it's a artifact creature, so it's an artifact. It's a creature, so it takes buffs. And it ramps. I'll take all of that. Lightning Bolt is in here, as this category is basically cards we'll play because we're red-black. They don't really synergize in any way. But you play Lightning Bolt just like you play Terminate, just like you play Cast Down, just like you play Dark Ritual, just like you play Cabal Ritual. So I think most of these are pretty self-explanatory, right? We're in Rakdos. Let's play these cards. When it comes to some of the special lands we're playing, I got the Draw's Pits that can sacrifice to draw a card. Bojuka Bog is just something you want to play, along with Mortuary Mire. It's just something you want to play. And then Great Furnace, an artifact land that can sacrifice to all of our Voltage Surges and Torch the Towers and Bargain effects and stuff. We've got a bunch of fetch lands. Like every fetch land we can feasibly play, we've almost got. We got Terramorphic Expanse. We've got Evolving Wilds. We've got Maestro's Theater. We are going to, fetch some lands in this deck. It turns out that permanent includes land, so if you just fetch a land, the team gets +1/+0. I'm taking advantage of that. As far as duels go in the deck, there's Tramway Station, which we can also sacrifice to draw a card, but that's synergy right there. Rakdos Guildgate, of course. We've got Drossford Bridge, of course. We've got Bloodfell Caves, of course. A lot of these are of courses. And the last few cards that are face down here are just the last few cuts that I made. If you're interested. In order, I believe the last few cuts were Welding Jar. It just doesn't do enough. Honestly, the idea is that this is a free team buff. It could be better. It really could just be better. There's Scream Puff in here, more food synergy, but this just costs way too much. It does, honestly. And it has no combat damage to get a food, so there's not as much synergy as I want. Gold Vein Pick is in here. This is an artifact that makes a treasure token when it comes into play and is an equipment, so it seems good enough, but it still felt like one of the weaker pieces in the deck. I wanted to play strong cards, so I cut it. Spite Bellows is also in here. This is evoke 3 mana, and when you evoke it, it deals 6 damage to a creature. So decent-ish removal spell that also counts as a sacrifice because you sacrifice it as soon as it comes into play. So you play it first main phase, blow up a creature, and then get in for a bunch of damage with your team. I just feel like there's cheaper and better ways to do that in this deck, but you could probably rally for Spite Bellows, and I'd find a spot for it. It was the hardest cut to make in the deck. But that is it for now. I'm going to throw it back to Dev for a special little segment before we finish things off. Now, that's how I built it, but that's not quite Itsky Lowitsky yet, because if you wanted a quick little top 10 of cards I didn't play that you should or maybe could play in the deck if you own them or if you wanted to order them, I think the top of the list here is Blood Aspirant. This card's really, really good. Not only does it get the benefit when you sacrifice stuff, but it also helps you sacrifice things. So I think you want to slot this in immediately. I just didn't own a copy of it. Send me one if you got one. But if you want another creature that grows pretty big throughout the game, you could try Giant Fly, pretty new card from the Avatar Jumpstart series. Just like Gixian Infiltrator and Blood Aspirant, this will get pretty big over the game, and even though it costs a little bit of extra mana, it's got flying, so it should be able to get through for a lot of damage. There's also Glimpse the Impossible. This is kind of a card draw piece, but if you don't use the card draw off the top of your library, you get a bunch of those Eldrazi spawn guys, and you can sacrifice those for mana and obviously for +1/+Os. Another good dude like that is Imricle's Hatcher over here. This is just a body that just gives you 3 of those spawn tokens, so that's like +3/+O in 3 mana. He almost pays for himself when he comes into play, and he's a body too, so this guy could go pretty well. I didn't have a copy. There's stuff like Deadly Dispute that could work in the deck, obviously, and Fanatical Offering, too. That lets you sacrifice artifacts. I should be playing it. I just don't have it, and I don't really want to spend like 80 cents on a copy of Fanatical Offering. It would be one of the more expensive cards in the deck, but again, you probably should have this in there. There's also Experimental Synthesizer and Blood Fountain, and I know I have a copy of Blood Fountain around here somewhere. I just couldn't find it. But again, if you wanted some more artifacts that'll give you some benefit when you sack them, blah, 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 this could be pretty good, is all I'm saying. But the last card I want to point out is Goblin Dark Dwellers, which got downshifted to common. It was a core set like 2021 rare. And at some point it got downshifted to common. So you can play this guy, kind of impulse draw, sacrifice some stuff. Could be really good in here. Yeah, if you take nothing else from this video, remember that they downshifted a rare to common out of nowhere. Kind of wild stuff. But anyway, now that is officially Allski Kowalski. So let me know if there's any other Pauper EDH commanders you want to see, not just from Avatar, but just like that are around, because I'm really having fun building for this format right now, and I really don't care if the card's in standard or modern or whatever. I'll build around anything at this point. I'm just having a lot of fun in this format. I don't really feel like I'm going to let up anytime soon. Even if only like 300 people watch this video, I'm probably going to release another one next season. So kind of buckle in. I'll probably do one of these every now and again. But if you'd rather me do big boy commander deck lists from time to time, got that Firelord Zuko coming out in the next couple of weeks, so stay tuned for that if you're into it. But if you'd rather me stick to standard content, I get that. That's literally going to be 90% of the other content I put out. We're not going anywhere when it comes to standard. Don't worry. But like I said, just hit me up in the comments with all your thoughts and emotions and ideas about the deck, especially your ideas. If you got anything that's like super spicy I've never heard of, a common from some far-flung corner that no one plays anymore or ever did in the first place, I'd really want to know, because that's one of the coolest things about Pauper EDH. I'm playing a bunch of cards that are in my collection, and yet I had to reread to know what they did at all. So, that's one of the cool things about Pauper EDH. It feels like a brand new experience a lot of the time, but I gotta stop gabbing about this format. You've seen the deck. It's a cool deck. Play it at a big boy commander table and see what happens. Something might. Probably get stomped in the dirt, but I at least want to know if you put up a fight. But anyway, y'all, that's all I've got for now. Just do the YouTube stuff on your way out. Make sure you like the video, hype the video. If you can find the button, it's around there somewhere. You can subscribe to the channel for more content. And of course, we have a Patreon. It's only $1 a month. Your support would be much appreciated, and it would go an awful long way. You'd be surprised how much $1 will do around here. But apart from that, if you can't do it, it's Christmas time. The wallet's pinched. I get that too. I'm just glad that you're here. Again, I'm not sure how many people are going to be watching this one, so if you made it to this part of the video, I think you're in a pretty elite group. Thanks for watching. But anyway, y'all, that's all I got for this one. I'm Deb from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.